Hi, Jay.
How's it, bud?
Hanging out. Got a little Duncan. That's nice.
Yeah. I'm keeping them going.
We just did a little chicken on the grill.
Beautiful.
We are early eaters with the 5 and 6 year old
Yeah, I
at my
bet.
house. So is Bucknell just pretty much deserted?
Some international students, a couple students that for whatever reason petitioned to stay on campus. And but those students and now they have to repetition because classes really finals ended on Wednesday.
Right.
But students have to be off campus by tomorrow, even if you would petition to stay on campus for the rest of the semester. And then if you want to, for whatever reason, stay for the summer, I think that's pretty much only international students.
Yeah, that's a tough draw for those guys, huh? They're just like in limbo. Like,
well, the question is, if you go home, can you get back?
right.
But yeah, we had a bunch of meetings, Zoom meetings today, sort of wrapping things up, both inside the College of Engineering and through the university itself.
Now, did you guys go pass fail kind of thing, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even pass, withdraw. So,
Pass, withdraw.
not even fail.
So at Rutgers, I'm at grad school in Rutgers. They gave people the option.
Mhm.
Basically, they could turn it into pass fail, because I think for some places too, like you don't get reimbursement for the credit. I mean, this is like graduate school education type stuff.
Mhm.
But, so that's like, unintended consequences. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that is, I forgot to say, yeah, it's pass, withdraw, or you get to see what the grade would have been, and you can accept that grade if you'd like.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. I think everybody's being very customer service friendly right now.
That is, we are having similar conversations.
I think the dog is gonna drive me crazy here if I don't give him something. So it was beautiful all day, and I could have left him outside. And right about 5:15, it got dark, and I'm afraid it's gonna start to pour.
Oh boy. Yeah, the weather's pretty good here. Although you can see a little something going on.
They're talking about either tonight or tomorrow, I think, maybe. Some parts of PA getting snow.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think we're below that, but we'll see. We're right on the edge.
Yeah. Are you good with sharing your screen and stuff? You familiar with this?
Yeah, I think I tried screen share and it looked like it worked fine. I went on it. I got on at about 5. Maybe one second.
Okay. Hey, Tara.
Hi. Hello, everyone who's on here. I see like a bunch of people. This is exciting. Happy Thursday.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm excited for tonight. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Do you want me to start right at 5:30?
Usually we give it a few minutes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, probably. So if you're on, we'll probably get going. It's just 5:30, like now. Probably give it to like 5:34 or so. That sounds good.
No problem.
We have 4 Zoom calls going on in the first floor right now.
Wow. 21st century education right there.
Pretty funny.
I have a brother in Queens, and I invited his family to come out here to PA just so they're not trapped all in one little room. But that's what his fear is. If my central PA internet can handle 4 and 5 people needing to be on Zoom
Yeah.
calls at the same time.
Yeah. I know a friend of mine was speaking the same thing. She was going to go out there. Mom has a house somewhere in Pennsylvania, and her husband remembered. He's like, the Wi-Fi won't work, and he's like, and I need to work.
Yeah, I've had Zoom calls with people from Bucknell that have said they can either do audio or they can do video, but not both.
Oh, wow.
And yet you're like trying to hold kids accountable, or some people are trying to hold kids accountable too. And it's like, a little different situation for each family here.
Absolutely.
It truly is.
We had a call today with the president of the university. Did a big 900-person Zoom today with the provost as well.
Wow.
They were talking just about some possibilities for the fall, and they're all pretty interesting.
Yeah. We had my youngest is going to go to Washington and Lee next year as a freshman in theory. And so we just got the president's email, which is like, we're trying.
Yeah, it could be interesting.
Yeah, we were talking about football. We had a staff meeting trying to figure out, how do we communicate to parents, and what's the realistic expectation for the summer, both in terms of like what they keep open, but also what what we can plan around, what we can do remotely. It's not a lot of great options, but I think college it's especially challenging.
Yeah.
But
Nobody said a pandemic could be easy.
No, they didn't.
Who? I mean, maybe somebody did, but not who that would be.
Got it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was on with all these ed tech people in different independent schools, in MK and Newark Academy and PEC, and you do all this stuff preparing and understanding educational technology, and this is a totally different scenario than really, because it's not really online class. It's not really, it's like all these models that people created that's not what this really is.
Right.
And it's, by the seat of your pants. So all, it's like all this expertise that people have are kind of not throwing it out the window, but it's not exactly the same thing.
It's challenged.
Yeah.
Nicholas.
So I think, Tara, we'll get
going. Yeah, let's do it. Yep.
My name. So guys, thank you everybody for coming in. I'm really excited to have Jason Milner here from Bucknell to talk about some strategies that he uses, especially with incoming rising freshmen in his program. As many of you know, Bucknell has one of the more competitive engineering programs in the country, probably in the world. Not to oversell you too much, Jay, but and there's a major challenge of just retaining kids, students that come in who want an engineering degree, want a math and science degree, and they drop out because they can't handle different aspects of the workload. Probably not because they're not smart enough, but because they lack maybe some skills that I think Jay will talk about. So he runs a program to help mentor and give a support to those guys at Bucknell. You can probably explain it better than I can. But before he started, I wanted to just talk through a couple offerings we have going on at Centercourt. The first thing I just wanted to make people aware of, if I can share my screen properly, which I apparently can't, sorry.
You had it going before.
Did I have it? Okay, sorry. So we just launched our summer program. So we have for rising seniors and juniors, we have a lot of stuff with college essay, college application workshops. These are one-to-one programs that we have, ACT, SAT prep, and recruiting. We also have, and I think this is very important in a lot of different schools, just one-to-one tutoring to either review or preview anything that you have going on. So maybe it's a bridge to AP Calc, maybe it's reviewing something that happened in chemistry that you don't feel strongly about. Maybe it's Spanish. So we have a lot of things going on there. And then if I can stop and start again, sorry. And just one other thing, just so you guys can be aware of, is just our Centercourt Instagram. It's just a good way to kind of stay, informed of what we have going on. There's Jay's lovely face and my ugly mug. And just one thing to kind of shout out to you guys. So Jay is going to do a couple of these. So he's going to be presenting tonight, and then the next 2 Thursdays at 5:30. So if you like what you hear, then there'll be some follow-up information for you. So so that's too much talking. But Jay, good, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Tara. Thanks for the intro. I'm going to share, I have a little presentation. And I started the presentation with a little bit about the program that I'm the director of. It's called the Engineering Success Alliance. And here's a little info on that program. This is the 10th year of the program, and I've been the director for 7 of those 10 years. And the first couple years, the director wasn't even a full-time employee, and there was no pre-orientation program, and there were there was no space on campus. So it's grown a lot in the time since I've been there. But as Rob mentioned, there's a lot of words here, but basically I work with students who come in to the College of Engineering who indicate that they want to be obviously engineering majors, but for whatever reason we identify that they might be either in need of an extra resource or possibly at risk for leaving the major and or underrepresented in some of the majors. And that's usually how we go about choosing the students to be in that program. Some of the aspects of the program, some of the components, like I said, we have a summer bridge program. It's about a week long before before orientation. It's a pre-orientation program. We offer a lot of academic support. We try to build program values that inside the community, which is the next part, community. We have a lot of support inside the university from other faculty, staff, and administrators. We try to bring in the family for some level of support, although that's a little trickier at the college level than it is at the high school or middle school levels because of some things like FERPA and things like that, which you may or may not be familiar with. But we have a lot of summer research and internship connections, and then it's a 4-year program. So the students who come in, we work a lot with them in terms of getting their transition and their academic support early. But after that, then they can kind of go on and be leaders for the next incoming groups and the younger groups as they get to be upper class students. But it's a lot of fun. Here's a couple pictures throughout the years, things we've done. Speaking of ugly mugs, there I am down there, and we have it's a fun program. We do a lot of fun things as well as really trying to help the students out. Let's see, let me get rid of my annotate. Yeah, and other way. Sorry, tech issue here. I probably shouldn't have annotated. Here's some of the other aspects. Like I said, community, different game nights. We get to go to amusement parks. We've gone skiing, things like that. We do a lot of different things to keep the students involved and make the students really feel like they're part of a community there. Skip ahead here. Here's us at our homecoming event, and again, I'm running. All right. So yeah, this is our homecoming event that we run every year, and this is basically the whole group together here, and it's a pretty classy looking group. Let me clear my drawings here. And then down below, there's a few of our accomplishments that we've had throughout the years. That's just one year. Year in, year out, we have students that are really involved on campus and really get get scholarships, and they get awards and summer internships and lots of great stuff. Problem there is, like I said, when we usually start with these students, plenty of them are in great shape, ready to go. And those are the students maybe we can rely on to sort of support some of the other students. But there are students who come in maybe underprepared, maybe not quite aware of where they need to be. So I work with them a lot, especially earlier in their career, on trying to get them all set and start trying to develop the skills that they're going to need in order to succeed there in the College of Engineering. So this is something I've adapted from one of my pre-orientation program presentations, and I'm going to keep an eye on time here so I might try to whip through some things, but I'll keep my eye also on the chat if anybody has any questions, and Rob and Tara could also obviously reach me if any of you have any questions. But so here goes. Here's the one of the first slide in one of the presentations that I like to do, which is something on learning how to learn. And we'll hear some quick little brief video clips that I have of some people, some experts talking. And that's kind of one of my first messages here is listen to the experts. They've made all the mistakes already. That's sort of what an expert is. I have a couple quotes at the end of the presentation that sort of highlight that. If we want to talk about listening to the experts, they've made all the mistakes. One of the first things you might want to do, and we have an expert that's gonna hit this home for us, is you want to try to find your team. Now this might apply more to the college level. The expert that we're going to hear from mentions engineering school a lot, but I definitely know Rob and I know each other from when I was a teacher at Del Barton. I know some of the students who are the top achieving students there really are, took this to heart without necessarily being told. They really developed a group or a team that they could work with where they were getting as much from one another as they were getting in the classroom. So it's really an important aspect of what we try to preach here in the College of Engineering. And it might be a little different than what some of the students are going to hear and what parents are going to hear in a middle or a high school level. But if you're starting to get into the AP level classes and you're starting to prepare for college, you are going to want to start focusing on this aspect. And let's hear an expert from MIT here real quick. This is about a minute or two long clip, and let's hear what he has to say on this issue. Oop.
generalities and get to specifics. What were some of the most worthwhile tricks and approaches that you used to help you study and learn most effectively?
Yeah, well, MIT is a very good institution, and not just technologically. For example, it has one of the top political science departments in the world. But that said, the techniques that I pursued, the first and foremost was to recognize that what worked in high school will not work in college. In high school, you're taught to do, actually in most of pre-K, you're taught to do your own work, study alone, etc. That is deadly. In college, at least in engineering schools, the expectation is that you're part of a group. The expectation is that there are course notes and course Bibles that are all over campus. There's an expectation that you have access to resources that if you don't have access to, you're in deep trouble. So you have to make sure that you live up to that expectation by making the connections to the people who have the resources that you need to succeed. The key lesson in collegiate study, at least in engineering school, is you are part of a team. And if you don't have a team, you find a team. If you are a team, you maximize the team, but you have to be part of a group. Engineering is a team sport. You know, all the stereotypes are about the lone engineer, the lone programmer, but it's a team sport, and you have to find your team as quickly as possible and make sure that the members of that team are very.
Cut it off there where he said, find your team as quickly as possible. If you notice on my slide, though, I said find a team positive and productive, and I put an asterisk. The reason that I put that asterisk there is we do have to remember that group study is not always positive and productive, right? Make sure that that dynamic is productive and not a distraction. There's also a fine line, right, between group work and maybe helping your friend out a little too much, shall we say. I think we all know where that line is, even if we sometimes pretend we don't. Did you get something from the assignment? Did you learn what you were supposed to learn from the assignment? Or did you just, reach out to a friend and say, hey, could you help me out and let me see what you've done? So group study is really vital when it comes to learning, a difficult material or taking a difficult major or a STEM field or anything like that. You're going to have to find a team of people that you can work with and that you know that it's a productive environment. And make sure that environment not only is productive, but know that phone call for that Saturday study group is not going to come every week if the first week you show up and everybody else said, hey, let's make sure we have everything set. Make sure that you've gone over and looked through the easy problems on the problem set for physics or whatever, and we'll get together and try to hash out the harder ones. And you show up and pull out a fresh piece of paper and go, okay, let's get started on problem one. If there are expectations when it comes to group study, make sure you meet those expectations, or that phone call for that study group isn't going to show up week in, week out. Pretty soon people are going to go, oh, you know what, I forgot to include Jason on that email list. And people are going to know why, right? So make sure that you're doing that. And here's some expectations for that, right? I think some of my stuff's in the way here. So tips for effective study, group study: set a goal, set criteria for participation. Everyone can ask and answer questions, and any member can express the group's understanding, right? So not just one person knows what's going on. Everybody should be able to express what the group has decided is happening in a given problem, or how to approach a given problem or a given concept, right? Further here on listening to the experts, right? Avoid illusions of competence, right? Looking at a painting doesn't make you an artist, is what we like to say. So we have somebody, Barbara again here. She's not the most dynamic speaker, not that I am either, but we can put up with her for a minute here. She talks a little bit about this idea of illusions of competence.
Jeff Karpicki, the same researcher who's done such important work related to recall, has also done research on a related topic: illusions of competence in learning. The reason students like to keep rereading their notes or a textbook is that when they have the book or Google open right in front of them, it provides the illusion that the material is also in their brains. But it's not. Because it can be easier to look at the book instead of recalling, students persist in their illusion, studying in a way that just isn't very effective. This is a reminder that just wanting to learn the material and spending a lot of time with it doesn't guarantee you'll actually learn it. A super helpful way to make sure you're learning and not fooling yourself with illusions of competence is to test yourself on whatever you're learning. In some sense, that's what recall is actually doing, allowing you to see whether or not you really grasp an idea. If you make a mistake in what you're doing, it's actually a very good thing. You want to try not to repeat your mistakes, of course, but mistakes are very valuable to make in your little self-tests before high-stakes real tests, because they allow you to make repairs in your thinking flaws. Bit by bit, mistakes help correct your thinking so that you can learn better and
so there's a couple interesting things she mentions there about illusions of competence, right? We sometimes try to believe that we know something more than we do. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but she addresses a couple things like self-testing and recall. So I'm going to address those a little bit closer to the end of my talk here. Another thing to think about is test taking is a skill. This is something I talk with the students about a lot. Next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about metacognition, and one of my focuses there is on process, and that's something that we talk about a lot, focusing on process, and that's the same thing when it comes to test taking. There's a professor of chemistry at North Carolina State named Richard Felder, and he gives this memo to his students who are disappointed in a grade that they got, and it includes a checklist. This is online, you can find this. And I could give a link, obviously, but he gives a checklist here of things that you might want to look at to determine why you got the grade that you thought you should have done much better. Here's his checklist, and it's a good one just to review every now and again. Talking about homework, how to approach your homework. In terms of again, you see some of the same things. Did you work with a classmate? Right, you need to be doing teamwork. Did you participate actively, right? Or did you just look at somebody else's? Did you understand all of the homework? Things like that. Did you go over study guide and problems with classmates? Again, we're seeing things like teamwork. Did you attend review sessions? Did you get sleep? We're going to talk about sleep in a minute as well. So this is a nice little checklist to go through if you end up feeling as if you were prepared for an exam, or feeling if you were in the right place to do well on an exam and you didn't do well. Here's an expert in chemical engineering education who's telling you here's some things that you can go through and make sure that you're doing to prepare for an exam. And if you're not, that's probably where maybe some of your problems are going to lie. You might want to try to get a yes to as many of those questions as you can as possible. Maybe our last expert here, we want to listen to the experts. They've already made the mistakes. Like I said, practice deep rather than shallow learning. What is that? Well, shallow is when you focus on sort of meaningless aspects of information, spend a lot of time memorizing definitions and mindlessly rereading notes. Some of that needs to be done. Sometimes you have to memorize some things. So yep, if you have to do that, you have to. But most of the time you want to spend when you're trying to learn a new subject is you want to be focusing on deep levels of processing, which is, as you can see below, is where we focus on subjective meaning. We relate new information to prior knowledge, and we make information personally meaningful. I got a bunch more here, and I'm already getting close to half hour, so I'm gonna try to skip a little bit here. But if we look at a lot of these big swirl of a lot of different things people might think affect how you learn, we can try to sort those out into actually what is going to impact us and what is going to affect us when it comes to learning. Here's another little video from these are a great series of videos on YouTube by Dr. Stephen Chu from Stanford University. He has a great series on there of videos. I'm going to skip that one because I want to get to some of the really specifics here. But he goes through and helps us kind of break down what are those things that we go back to here, some of these different things that might in fact impact our learning. He helps us organize those and tells us the things that really help you learn are minimizing distractions, the deep processing like we talked about, metacognition, which people may or may not be aware of, but I'm going to do a little something on that next week. There's a plug on that. And practicing, retrieval and application, which is some of the stuff we've already heard about, recall and things like that already. Some of the things that don't impact learning as much as you might think are some of the things on the left-hand side there, and some of them might even be a little controversial. That there are some people who indicate that there's not a lot of evidence to support learning in those areas. So the end of my talk here, I wanted to go through if these are what the experts are telling us about how we learn and best approaches to learning difficult material. And I think I've given you some good resources there. A lot of those people you can find have great series, both on YouTube and some of them are on some of the open courseware classes such as edX and Coursera and things like that. I think you can learn a lot from what some of those people are telling us. But what are some specifics we could actually use to employ some tricks? One thing is, as they say, just wanting to learn or putting in the time to learn doesn't necessarily mean you're going to learn, but you definitely are going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to spend long hours. One way to do that is, I found, and I know a lot of students really like this as well, is a thing called Pomodoro, which is, I believe, Italian for tomato. And the reason for that is, we'll talk a little bit about procrastination. If you have your homework due and you have a big assignment, right? There's just nothing you want to do less at that moment, right? And you're right to feel that way. Students are right to feel that way. Adults are right to feel that way. There is actually pain centers in your brain that start activating when you don't want to do something. And you can do one of two things when that happens. You can quickly shift your attention, which is another name for procrastination, right? Or you can continue to work through the pain, and after a few minutes, that will subside. So one way that we like to talk to students about, getting over that hump is a thing called Pomodoro, which is just a little hack where you have a 25-minute, you set a 25-minute timer, and you try to work and focus for those 25 minutes specifically on one thing. Don't bounce around to different subjects. Say for that 25 minutes, I'm going to focus on this one thing, and then you get a 5-minute break. These Pomodoro timers are everywhere on the internet. This is the one I use, tomato timer right here, right? You start her up, and then it'll tell you when your 25 minutes are up, and then you can stop and get started again. That allows you to maybe just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do 2 Pomodoros this morning on physics. That allows you to get over that hurdle of that first few minutes of pain center in your brain that's telling you to procrastinate. I think anybody who's an exerciser knows the 5 minutes before you exercise is the time you least want to do it, and the 5 minutes after you've started is the time where you least mind doing it. Once you're 5 minutes in, it's like, this isn't bad. Why was I putting this off all day? So it's the same idea. So it's also a good way of focusing on process. As I said, that's a big thing with us, focusing on process. It's easier to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do this, for 25 minutes as opposed to saying, all right, I'm going to sit down and finish all my calculus homework for the week. So there's one good one. Another one, question generation. Work on that deep processing. Something I talk to the students about constantly is when you're sitting down to get ready to take an exam, make an exam. Sit down and think, what questions would I put on the exam if I was going to give this exam? We also talk about staying out of learn mode and staying out of study mode and staying in learn mode. And one focus on that is almost try to learn as if you have to teach it. So put yourself in the role of the teacher and say, okay, what questions do I think I'm going to see? When you do that, if you're working with a group, as we've talked about, group work being really helpful, that's an opportunity for you to test one another. Have somebody make up an exam and you take their exam, and you make it up an exam and have them take it. So working on that deep processing is when you develop, you make the question yourself. If you don't feel like you can make the questions yourself, you might not be where you need to be yet in terms of getting ready to study. You might have to go back and do some review and get yourself ready to get to the point where you're finalizing and putting the finishing touches on what you need before an exam. Recall and self-testing, right? It's not what you put in, it's what you can get out. So sometimes people just keep looking over their notes and things like that. Like I said, we don't want to sit around just memorizing useless facts. Sometimes there is some memorization involved, however. That's a great idea when you can get out the note cards and things like that, and you can self-test yourself and see what you can recall. They talk about highlighting sometimes, things like that, not being all that helpful. They say when it is helpful is if you highlight and then try to, on your own, recall what it is you highlighted and try to summarize in your own words. Just a couple more here real quick. Deliberate practice. We just talked about illusions of competence. Illusions of competence, one of the things people do is practice the stuff they're good at. That's the opposite of what you want to do, okay? You don't want to practice stuff, you want to practice stuff you find the most difficult. You can easily trick yourself into thinking you're ready for an exam because you know how to do 2 or 3 things really well when there are about 10 things that you've kind of put off because you're hoping those don't pop up on the exam, and they almost surely will, right? Spaced repetition. This is just common sense, right? If you, for instance, were on a sports team and you made the championship game, you won the semifinals on a Saturday, and you had the championship game coming up the next Saturday. Are you going to say, all right, let's take the week off and prepare the Friday before the game, or are you going to start working all week, little by little, and start trying to put it together in advance of the big game? Well, I mean, it's obvious what you'd want to do in that situation, and yet when you talk to students about preparing for an exam, sometimes they look at you funny if you're ever suggesting getting started a week in advance. The test's on Thursday. I'll start looking over and reviewing on Wednesday. You wouldn't do that in any other situation, whether it was sports or a big music recital or anything like that. You would space out your repetition, right? And then last thing, I mentioned something about getting a good night's sleep and things like that. Your brain has multiple modes. One is focused and one is diffuse, so that you can spend a long time focused on something, and you can do those 25-minute Pomodoros and things like that, and really try to work on your focus for those short bursts. But you also need to allow your brain to employ the diffuse side of your brain. I'm a hardcore crossword puzzle guy, and I'll often do a crossword puzzle up to the point where I can't get any more clues, and then I put it away, and I come back and look at it the next day, and and answers are just jumping out at me. And I think that's where your brain has had some time to mull things over, even when you didn't necessarily know it was happening. And the best ways to do that are sleep and exercise, right? So sometimes when you're looking at students who are really high achieving students in difficult majors, those students are often looking at things like sleep and exercise as things that just get in the way. You know, they want to make sure they're on task all the time, all the time, all the time. And ultimately that can be self-defeating. So those things are really as important as the time that you spend in the library, in the lab, etc. I think that's it for some of the specifics that I wanted to talk about, things that you need to do when you're starting to prepare and work on some difficult material. But again, I have some quotes here that hit home some of our main points, right? Like I said, listen to the experts. They're the ones that have made all the mistakes in a narrow field. That's Niels Bohr. He's a famous physicist. Oscar Wilde's a famous writer. Experience is simply the name we give our mistakes. Seneca, writer from ancient Rome, I believe. Why we teach, we learn. That's where we talk about making sure that when you're working with a team, you're getting as much helping somebody else and teaching somebody else as you are getting from what they're giving you. You're getting as much from helping others and allowing them the opportunity to sit down and explain something to somebody. That gives you an opportunity to understand what's your level of understanding, and are you ready for the exam? Do you really understand it? If you can't teach it, you don't know it well enough. Talking about Pomodoro and making sure that we're on task. Begin while others. There's an inspirational writer. Begin while others are procrastinating, and work while others are wishing. And then the last quote I have, and maybe the most important one for today's day and age, multitasking. I don't know if we can see that. Multitasking is gotta move my thing here. The art of doing twice as much as you should, half as well as you could. So make sure when you're doing things, in today's day and age, you don't have 900 tabs open. You're not also on Facebook. You're not also on Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some great experts in the field of learning. And those are some of their suggestions that I think are really valuable things that I try to pass along to our students. And then those are some specific ways to employ and get at those bigger concepts. If anybody has any questions or anybody has anything they want to reach out to me about, like I said, Rob and Sarah have my email. I'm going to talk a little bit about metacognition next week. And thanks for showing up.
Jay, this was great. Thank you. I had a quick question in the chat about if you'd be willing to make the slides available.
Absolutely.
Afterwards. So great. So we'll send that out.
Yep.
With a follow-up email. We'll take care of that. But I also wanted to ask you about, working with kids on the high school level, as I know you have, and thinking about this group procedure and learning in teams, and just what you've seen, teaching AP at a high level, just what you would recommend to, obviously it's one thing if you're living in a dorm and you're all in an engineering program, but just what you observed that would work. Because certainly we have a lot of high flyers at our, working at Del Barton, but there's also a lot of kids that just grind it out, and we're able to use some of those things. So I wonder just how you've seen that kids create those team aspects effectively, as 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, maybe in AP environments, things like that.
Yeah, I think some of the students that I've seen do it most effectively, it almost becomes, not to the point of a distraction, but it almost becomes a little bit of their social life. The students that they get together and do physics problem sets with are students that they don't mind spending time with. So if they're getting together for 3 hours, they are putting in 2 good long hours, but there might be an hour in there where they're talking gaming, or they're doing other things, talking about the football game the night before, or talking about sports or things like that. So I think when students have a good productive group, they know it can become a little bit of their social life. You know, when you have a group of people who all have similar goals or similar interests, hopefully that's what you would be, you know, if you're taking those higher level courses or AP courses or things like that, you have that level of interest. So it shouldn't be torture to get together with some of those people. So if you can find a group where again, it feels like a little bit of your social life, a little bit of your hangout time is getting together to do some work together. I think that usually works out the best. And you know, we have certain rooms at Bucknell in certain areas where you know, this is where all the chemical engineers seem to hang out. This is where all the mechanical engineers seem to hang out. And sometimes there'll be long hours where maybe for a half hour you won't say anything at all to one another, and then you'll just poke a head up and say, hey, does anybody know what's going on here? And you know, just making sure that you're in with a group of people who are like that, like-minded, and have a you know, similar focus and a similar level of you know, determination when it comes to what they're trying to do. But yeah, I think if you're taking those higher level courses, it shouldn't be that hard to look around and find a couple people that might be similarly motivated and also have maybe some similar interests outside of that getting together with them won't seem like torture. And but by and large, you know, it's a great question, because by and large, the students that struggle are the students that I know just go into their room, open up their book, and try to just they're working hard. They're working hard, but they're just trying to grind away. You know, the other aspect of the teamwork thing is misery loves company. There's some misery to doing a you know, a mechanical engineering degree or something like that. You know, there's some long hours. There's some tough stuff. And if you're sitting there working with others and not sitting in your room thinking, I bet everybody else is done with this and they're out now having fun. You know, if you're sitting there telling yourself that every night, it's sometimes hard to get motivated. You know, I'm the only one that's struggling right now. I'm the only one that can't get this stuff done. You know, it's going to be pretty quick before you start saying to yourself, maybe this isn't the place for me. And that's true, you know, of some of your AP courses and things like that. And you're sitting there thinking, I think everybody else is breezing through this class. I think everybody else is having no problems. But if you start getting together and kind of, you know, like I said, misery loves company, and starting to actually see how other people are doing, you know, it opens your eyes and helps you realize, besides benefiting you in terms of your ability to learn the material, it gives you a better perspective on where everybody else is at.
Sounds like a good 360 concept, Rob.
Always looking for more. That's great. Other questions that people have, or anything you'd like Jay to follow up a little bit more on?
Sorry, I went a little long there.
No, that's great.
No, it's great. It's great. Maybe not.
Okay, well, we'll follow up with everybody with some of the slides and materials that Jay had used and mentioned. And I think, you know, getting into the weeds a little bit, I know, you know, I have a degree as a learning disabilities teacher consultant, and the metacognition thing is a very fancy word that is really like one of the most important parts of learning. It's one of the things when, you know, you look at kids that really struggle to learn, that they struggle to write, they struggle to do word problems and math, that they can't do as effectively as everybody else. So, and it is a learned thing. It's something that you can be taught to do. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more, especially from you know, mechanical engineers learning at a pretty high level. So I'm excited for that, and we'll also follow up with you guys in terms of that information. So thank you everybody for being on tonight. It's 6:15, so man, we're respect your time. Yeah, and thank you everybody.
Thank you, Jason.
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Jay. It was great.
Fabulous. Be well.
All right, take care all. End meeting for all. Okay.